Welcome back to your divorce den, where our focus is on helping you navigate the complexities of getting divorced and making sure that we're giving you the right information to put you on your road to success. Another big thing that we really want to address here is destigmatizing divorce. Throughout the United States and honestly throughout the world, when people find out that someone is divorced, there often is associated this sort of connotation that they failed at something, that something didn't work out right, whether it is a cultural expectation, a religious expectation, a gender expectation, a family or community expectation of what divorce means, of what marriage means, and then of what divorce means. So going into this topic is really important to us because we see this every day. We see people getting divorced. And the reality is that depending on where you are in the country and depending on where you are sort of in socioeconomic status or sometimes even just within your community, the statistics change a little bit. But still today, about 50% of people who are getting married are getting divorced. Half. So if we're talking about this such a large number, even if it's 40%, it really doesn't matter. When we're talking about such a large number of people who enter marriage are now leaving the marriage. That's huge. It's a huge number. So for us to have these expectations or these thoughts or these prejudices or whatever this stigmatizing idea is about the divorce itself and maybe even about the people who got divorced, it's really harmful. Really, really harmful. It doesn't help the people who are staying married, right? And they don't want to get divorced because they're afraid of that stigma. And it's certainly not helping the people who are choosing to move forward and get divorced. So today let's talk about three main stigmatizing ideas or thoughts that people might be experiencing if they're going through divorce. Number one is moral or societal failings, right? Where people think that there's some sort of moral value wrapped up in your marriage and then your divorce, or some societal expectation that you have now failed. A lot of times this comes from either community or family structures that really expect certain social norms to be upheld. And that can be whether it's a cultural expectation or a religious one, or sometimes even a gendered one. So let's break that down a little bit. Cultural expectations, right? When people get married, it's this big, huge celebration. A lot of times people spend tens of thousands of dollars on their wedding to have their family, their friends, their colleagues, their community show up and celebrate this union of the two people and oftentimes the two families. So there's this sort of cultural expectation that now these two people have formed a union that is till death do us part, right? We have now taken the vows in front of our whole community that no matter what happens in sickness and in health, in richer or poorer, all of these sort of expectations and these vows that most people swear by when they're getting married, that this is going to be upheld until death do you part. So in other words, no matter what happens, you're going to work it out. And then no matter how bad it gets, you're going to continue to work it out. Even if you know it's not good for you, even if your spouse knows it's not good for them, you're going to stick it out because you swore, right, in front of the whole community that you're not going to be leaving this marriage until one of you dies. That's basically it. And then if there is a time where either you grow apart or there's a breakdown in the relationship and one of you wants to leave, it's perceived as being selfish or self-centered or really outside the norms of the community. You're splitting up a family. You're hurting these two separate families when the two of you came together. And a lot of times there are such pressures put on people that they'll stay in a marriage regardless of how it's not working for them. So again, understanding the high percentage of people that actually get divorced, imagine the pressures that people are feeling internally and externally if they decide that this relationship is no longer working. There's also certain religious pressures that people feel when it comes time to think about getting divorced. So the religion that they were married in, that they are part of, that maybe is part of their bigger community, maybe even part of their family ties, there is a certain stigma that maybe it's a sin or maybe it's prohibited in their religion for the two of them to get divorced. And they feel, again, these internal and external pressures as far as actually admitting that something's not working out. A lot of times people even seek guidance or seek some sort of therapy, marriage therapy, through a religious elder, through somebody in the community, in their religious community, who can provide them with guidance on ways to stay together. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad or that it's right for that family, but the expectation certainly is that everything will remain in that religion and the couple will remain married in order to help further the ideals of that religion. And they hold it to be morally sacred, this marriage, where even when it's not working for one of the people in the marriage, the religion sort of sets out these rules that you have to live by, that you're going to stay in the marriage. And sometimes that is just not realistic. Again, this is not a moral judgment one way or the other if somebody chooses to stay in a marriage for their religion or not. However, I do think that it's important to understand that if somebody decides that they're going to get a divorce and they are in a religion that really expects them to stay married, think about how hard that is for them. Think about how they fully understand the possibility that they'll be ostracized from their religion, that the community might turn their back on them, that people might think of them very differently. So taking the stigma out of divorce will really help these people remain part of their religious community, maybe just in a different way. And a third moral judgment is gendered criticism. Whether we like it or not, it really is a big stigma for a woman to say that she's been divorced once, twice, maybe even 3 times. People love to judge other people's relationships or failings in a relationship, that their relationship broke down and it was just disastrous. And oh my gosh, I can't believe she's been married 2 times and she's going to do it again. Those judgments that we hold for other people have no place in society, because the truth is we don't know what happened behind closed doors, number one. And number two, it's literally none of our business. What happens behind my closed doors is nobody's business. The fact that I can be married once, twice, 10 times, that is between me and my spouse. That's it. With such a large percentage of women initiating divorce throughout the United States, a lot of times people will see women as homewreckers or women who are failing in their duties as wives and mothers, when there is literally there's no basis to those sort of judgments or claims. And the reality of the situation is, if a relationship is not working for anyone, especially for a woman, then you are doing no good by staying in that relationship. You're not helping yourself, you're not helping your spouse, you're not helping your children, and you're certainly not helping the larger community. You need to be true to yourself. You need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're addressing any issues that you have. And if leaving the marriage, whether it's through separation or divorce, means that that's how you have to take care of yourself, then that's what you do. When you're a better person for yourself, then you can be there for the larger community. Oftentimes, women are seen as abandoning their family if they don't fight for custody of their children or they don't fight for their house. And the same can certainly be said of men when they're getting divorced as well. I will say, traditionally in the United States, the stigma on women is much higher. It just is. We judge women differently. We point fingers at them in a way that we do not at men, and the expectations that we put on women are very, very high. Whether it is that they're divorced, whether it is that they're single too long, whether it is that they have too many children, whether it is that they have no children. So just think about those expectations that we put on women that we do not put on men. So when we're talking about destigmatizing divorce, this is a really, really important thing to remember. Taking stigma and judgment out of divorce will really help people be the best version of themselves and bring the most to their community. A second issue is that divorcing or divorced people are often stereotyped as being unreliable, as being selfish, as being people who really can't be relied upon in any sort of relationship, whether it's a professional relationship or a personal relationship. Sometimes they are seen as damaged, or that they really couldn't tough it out and stick it out with their partner, and that nobody will want to marry them again. Nobody will want to work with them again. These are, again, stereotypes that are really, really harmful when it comes to allowing people to be the full version of themselves. One of those unfair characterizations is this stigmatization at work, right? People sometimes view people who have been divorced as maybe less professional. When there's a work event and they have invite your spouse, invite your partner sort of thing, and you are the divorced one, right? People look at you as if you are not as reliable, not as professional. And while I know that this is not always the case, there is an underlying tone in a lot of companies, in a lot of workplaces that uphold these sort of traditional values, these traditional ideas of what people look like when they're married, how they come to the workplace when they're married, and how it is they show up at these work events. Sometimes the divorce itself can even affect any sort of advancement in your career, in your position, climbing the corporate ladder. Because again, whether we like to admit it or not, companies are run by people. People have these preconceived notions in their head about who you are, and if divorce is something that they see in their head as negative, they'll continue to view you in that negative light. A second consideration is parental criticisms. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, this is going to be really, really negative. This is going to reflect really negatively on me and my family. My parents are never going to understand. My parents love my spouse. They don't want to see us split. So holding on to a toxic or a dysfunctional relationship for the sake of your parents, criticism from family members, just think about how oxymoronic that is. Think about how damaging that is for yourself and honestly for the rest of your family, because all you're doing is putting on a farce. This is just a charade that you're putting on for them. And at the end of the day, you're not being true to yourself and you're not being honest with them. Another family consideration there is when it comes to single mothers. There are just so many stigmatizing ideas out there about single parents, especially single mothers. They can't participate in school events. They can't show up when they're supposed to. They neglect their children. They have latchkey kids. They are not supportive enough of their kids. And then if they're not working and they're there, they're not supporting their children enough. They're not contributing financially. They're trying to go after the dad for more child support because they refuse to work. So no matter what single parents do, especially single mothers, they're losing. They're getting judged one way or they're getting judged the other way. And the truth is, people are doing the best that they can, whether it's financially, whether it's emotionally, whether it's the time and resources that they have to spend with their children. So us getting it out of our heads, again, it's none of our business how somebody parents their children. Unless we're talking about abuse or neglect, that's something different. What I'm talking about is how much time a parent spends with their children, maybe based on their work schedule, maybe based on the children's schedules themselves, whether it's school, extracurricular activities. That's something that they have to now navigate. Being a married couple and then now going to being a single parent, they have to navigate that on their own. And trying to figure that out is a tough road. So we need to take our heads out of it and understand that maybe we need to think with our hearts a little bit more and be compassionate. Raising children as a single parent is really difficult. So we need to rely on our community and we need to rely on people who are not going to judge us for doing the best we can. A third aspect of these stereotypes might be social alienation. When you are part of a larger community as a married couple and then you get divorced, sometimes you're not invited places, whether it's part of your religious institution or neighborhood get-togethers, family events, extended family, no matter what. It's really hurtful when you start to see no one inviting you somewhere, no one giving you a call somewhere, you being sort of ostracized as if you only mattered when you were a couple. That's just hurtful and it's harmful and it's not helping us as a community and it's not helping the family at all. Sometimes people even feel like they don't want to be around divorcing couples because it's somehow contagious or it's somehow you're going to get the idea now, oh, okay, Jack and Jill down the block did it. Maybe I can do it too. That's not how it works. We all know that. It's not the flu. It's not the common cold. It is a personal choice. And us cutting people out of our lives or cutting them out of these sort of bigger community events or these get-togethers is not helpful. We want to make sure that we're giving as much support as we possibly can to people who are going through divorce and removing that stigma that there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just choosing a different path in life because nobody did this when they were getting married, right? I guarantee you nobody thought, oh my gosh, they're ruining their life because they're getting married. Well, maybe there were a few people who thought that, but society at large was certainly not thinking that. A lot of times people are seen as being financially irresponsible because they're getting divorced. Oh my gosh, how are you going to make it now when, Jack made so much money, and Jill, how are you going to be able to afford to live on your own now? That is just a poor financial decision. Do it when the kids are older. Do it when the kids are out of high school. Again, we don't know anything about their financial situation, and we shouldn't. It's not our business. If somebody's in a very toxic marriage, if someone's in a bad marriage, a marriage that makes them unhappy, you think that saving a few dollars is going to make them feel better when they have 2 5-year-old kids and they have to wait until they're 18? No. Their financial situation is their business, and getting divorced doesn't make you financially irresponsible, even if you're struggling, even if the family even if the family unit in 2 different households is going to struggle a little bit, it doesn't mean that it's financially irresponsible. Maybe if we viewed it a little differently and we saw it maybe as a systemic problem where we didn't have the support systems that we needed, maybe if we saw it as a way to start considering why is the cost of living so darn high that somebody cannot live on their own and support their family, then we would take it and maybe make some change for that. Take it in this global perspective as opposed to just blaming that one person or that one family. There's also a single status bias. Like it or not, when we are invited to events, whether it is with people we know, coworkers, no matter what, there's always this expectation, bring your partner. And while that's great, there are often times when somebody doesn't have a partner. And if they know that you've been divorced, there's sort of this bias against you coming. It's, oh, okay, so I get it. They're not part of a bigger unit. They're just on their own. As if our own self doesn't have value. This one individual showing up, standing in front of you, doesn't have value. I can assure you, I've been to plenty of events where there is a couple there and only one of them is engaged and talking and having a good time. And the other person is sort of that wallflower sitting in the back who maybe doesn't want to be there, maybe is not feeling well, having a bad time, whatever it is. There is the other person who is there on their own, showing up, bringing all of their value. So why do we need the wallflower? Let them stay home if they're not comfortable being there. So when we identify and bring people into our own mind as a couple and give them more value than just this one person, we are really not being true to the reality. We need to be able to support people where they are, and if that means that they're on their own in a relationship or just in the room, then so be it. They bring their own value. There's also a lot of misconceptions about the divorce process itself. And I know I've talked about it a million times and I'll continue to speak about it. But when we're talking about being in court, if your neighbors or your family members or somebody else hears, they can say, oh my gosh, Jill is dragging this out so many times and poor Jack had to go to court 4 times this year. I don't know, something like that. You don't really know what's going on, right? Unless you're in the back of the courtroom and listening to every word that's being said, unless you are working behind the scenes with them and their attorney, you don't really know what the back end things of the divorce are. You don't know what the negotiations are. You don't know what the judge is saying. You don't know what the intricacies and the details of the finances are. You don't know any of that. So not understanding the legal complexities that might be going on in their case, that leads people to make judgments. That leads people to start assuming that they know best. My next door neighbor got divorced and it took them 3 months and they were done with it. Why is it taking Jack and Jill so long? You know why? Because Jack and Jill's case is not your next door neighbor's case. That's why. Just understand that not everything is cookie cutter. Not everything is the same. And based on that, sometimes people think, oh my gosh, Jack or Jill is so combative. They're just so unwilling to compromise. They're just such a pain. They really are just trying to, they're really out there just to get the other person. They really want to just stick it to them. I don't know. Maybe that is the case. Maybe it's not. But that stigma that we have, that idea that we have in our head that because things are a little bit combative or things are taking a little longer, that we all of a sudden know what's going on. We don't. We have no idea. So just as I've talked about a million times, and I'll continue to talk about, stay out of court, right? Make sure that you're trying to resolve these things in mediation or in the collaborative model. That's going to eliminate that whole level of the litigation sort of rub. But no matter what, people will still judge you. If mediation is taking a little too long, why did mediation take you a year to get through when I have, again, these next door neighbors who did it in 3 months? Because our situation was different. Our emotions were different. Our situation was different. No matter what, it's not your business. It's not your business as to what went on in somebody else's marriage, and it's certainly none of your business as to what went on in their divorce. So those are some of the three main stigmatizations when it comes to getting divorced in America. And I really think that it's important for us to have these open communications, these open dialogues, these conversations about why it is that the stigma really attaches to people based on divorce. When we start to really be honest about it, when we start to open up about it, I'm really hopeful that we can start viewing divorce and divorcing people, the individuals, in a different light. Just view them as people who maybe need support at a time that might be hard for them, just as if somebody were ill, just as if somebody were mourning the death of a family member, and we rally behind them to be supportive, to offer whatever help and assistance, whether it's financial, emotional, spiritual, no matter what. Maybe we can start to think about doing that for someone who's going through divorce. As much as you're able and as much as they're willing to accept, I really think that it can change the entire landscape of divorce if we start removing all of those negative connotations as to what we think about divorce in America. So what are your thoughts? Do you think that there are any other obstacles when it comes to having open dialogues about divorce? Any other stigmatizing ideas that you think that people have? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us here at the Den, and we look forward to seeing you on the next video.